Number 1.
This just happened tonight. It was midnight and I was driving home from work. I turned onto my street and noticed that someone in baggy clothes with their hood up who had been walking on the sidewalk had started running after my car. They were waving their arms and trying to flag me down. I live in an urban area that's pretty notorious for high crime rate. It was late and no one else was around, so I wasn't about to pull over. I was basically home, so I just sped up and pulled into the underground garage of my condo building. Clearly, this was a bad call on my part, because the person followed me, running into my garage before the door could shut behind me. I see the hooded person in my rearview mirror still running after my car through the garage, waving their hands at me and trying to get my attention. I pull into my parking spot and turn my car around cause fuck it, I'm not getting out of my car now. With the light of the garage, I can see the person under the hood is a woman, and she's standing right in front of my car. As a fellow woman, I'm slightly concerned that she actually might be in trouble and was trying to flag me down for help. So I lock my car doors and roll my window down just a crack. She's probably in her late 20s to early 30s, clearly drugged out and carrying a big ass bag. She walks up to my window and smiles. In this super friendly, upbeat voice, she says, "Hi." I wait, expecting an explanation as to why she just chased me down the street and followed me into my garage, but she says nothing else. So I say, hi. And she enthusiastically says, "First of all, rock it out. Hell yeah. Second of all, are we going to do this? Me, you, a friend?" And gestures to her bag. I jump to the conclusion that she's either propositioning me for a threesome or for drugs, neither of which I was very interested in, so I nope the fuck out of there and drive out of the garage. I'm watching in my rearview mirror and notice that she didn't follow me out, so I call 911. The 911 operator says that they'll send someone over. I park across the street from my building and sit with my eyes glued on the garage door. Now, I'm getting anxious waiting for the police to arrive, because the elevator to the rest of my condo building opens up right near my parking spot. I'm afraid she's going to get on the elevator and start wandering the floors of my building. So I sit tight in my car for about 10 minutes until the police get there. They drive back into the garage with me, and the woman is still just casually standing in my parking spot, clutching her bag against her. Her face brightens up when she sees my car, and she starts waving at me. And then her face suddenly drops when she sees the police car driving behind me. I stay in my car but roll the window down so I can listen to the police as they talk to her. They ask her if she lives here. She says no, and she's unable to provide them with an address of where she actually lives. She says that she was leaving a friend's house and she got cold on the walk, so she came into my garage. She was also unable to provide the address of the friend's house that she was coming from, as she said. At this point, the police officers told me that I'm free to go upstairs and that they'll call me if they need anything else. I wish I could have listened to the rest of the interaction. I'm really curious about what her explanation was and what they ended up doing with her. I triple-checked my locks before I went to sleep.
Number 2.
So, this happened to my best friend and I about 9 years ago. We were 16, she had a car, and she liked to drive a lot. We drove around town almost nightly. Anyway, so one night, maybe around 8 or 9 PM, we decided to find the end of this rather main road. As the miles go on, it starts to get to be in the middle of nowhere. After about 30 minutes, there is a pond to our left, and the road is gravel. We had no idea where we were. We saw nothing around us. The road ends with a boulder in the middle of it and trash and sticks everywhere. So we turn around and head home. A few minutes later, this truck is right on our arse. We hadn't seen a road it could have came off of. We hadn't seen anyone around that pond at all. It seemed to have come out of nowhere. My friend is speeding now, about 70 miles per hour. The speeding limit was probably 40 or 45. We were freaking the fuck out at this point. I then called my mum in a panic to tell her that someone was about to kill us. My friend starts having a panic attack on the wheel, so I'm trying to steer and talk to my mum at the same time. We were speeding through stop signs. The guy tries to get beside us and run us off of the road, but my friend sped up and nearly missed him. Then he turns off his headlights and does it again. We then speed along for about another 20 more seconds, and then we realize that he's gone. Just like that, he disappears. When I got home, I told my mum the story from the beginning, and she said to me that that pond was very shady and she thinks that we interrupted a drug deal or a meth lab site and they wanted to scare us off. I still live in the same city, but I haven't been back to that area again, and I have no plans of doing so.
Number 3.
In January of this year, my friend's mum took us and another friend to go look for prom dresses. We were out till about 8 PM, so it was already pitch black outside when we left. I was going to get dropped off first, since I still had some homework to do. To get to my house, you turn off a busy road onto a side street, then onto another side street. On the first side street, we passed someone walking on the sidewalk, which was a little strange considering it was dark out, but whatever. I didn't think much of it. Until I went to get out of the car. My friend's parents never pull into my driveway because it's tricky to get into. I'm sitting on the right hand side of the car and my house is on the left side, so I would have to walk around the car and cross the street. Anyway, I'm about to get out of the car when my friend's mum tells me to close the door. The guy we passed earlier was now walking towards the car, right in the middle of the street. Mum told me to stay in the car because the guy was holding something in his right hand, and it resembled a gun. Mum put the car in drive and floored it up the street, and the guy started running after us. We turned on another side street, and he followed us again. He only stopped when we went onto the main road, but even then, it seemed like he was going to follow us. We went and dropped off the other friend first, and when we got back to my house, there was nobody on the street. When I told my parents about it, my dad pointed out that there was someone going around our neighborhood robbing cars, which is a possible explanation. But why would a car thief need a gun, and why would he chase after a moving car? So yeah, possibly gun-wielding creeper. I don't want to know what your intentions were.
Number 4.
What you will hear is an account of the most terrifying experience I've ever had. It happened last January and it still haunts me to this day. I was coming home from my boyfriend's place. It was just after 4 in the morning and I was just a few minutes away from home. Then it happened, or should I say, it began. Driving down a stretch of road towards home, I was approaching a green light that intersected a suburban neighborhood to my left and a short, dark dead-end street to my right. I checked out the dead-end street in the past out of curiosity, and all that lay at the end was a tiny rundown house besides a small wooded area. I was in the left lane and was about to pass through the intersection. Suddenly, out of the dead-end street, a car veered out in front of me into my lane and slammed on its brakes. I slammed on my brakes, nearly rear-ending them. What the fuck? I thought. They must be drunk. I should go around them and get some distance from this idiot. I went into the right lane, sped past them, and merged back into the left lane, anticipating the upcoming left I'd have to make to get home. They started speeding up behind me. I took the left turn onto the road that my street turned off of. They followed. It made me uneasy, but considering the fact that the road we'd turned onto was one of the main streets in my city, I was yet to be alarmed. I turned onto my street. They followed. My street is not a major road. This is when I realized that the situation was much more serious than I'd first anticipated. I decided to do a 3-point turn in my neighbor's driveway, as to not let them know which house I live in, and since the other direction was a quicker route to the police station. Now, in retrospect, I'm not sure why I didn't get the fuck away as fast as possible. I know curiosity killed the cat, however, and I wanted to know who this person was, what they looked like. Maybe they perceived my passing them as cutting them off and took it personally. I didn't really cut in that close though. Slowly we passed each other. Our eyes met. It was the look on his face that made my skin crawl. There was absolutely no expression on his face. His eyes seemed dead and cold. I began down my street, in the direction of the police station. As I glanced in my rearview mirror, I saw him doing a U-turn as well, and that's when the adrenaline kicked in. I promptly turned back down the street I just came from. As I expected, he followed. My phone was out of reach. I turned back onto the long stretch of road. It was the fastest way to get to the police station. Oh dear God, I have to make 3 more turns to the police station and it's 23 blocks from here. I pressed on the gas. I kept glancing in my review, and I noticed one thing that still sticks with me. I noticed that one headlight was dimmer than the other. We both had old cars, but he quickly caught up to me. We were driving extremely fast, yet he tailed me about 3 feet from my bumper. I noticed he was going to the left of my vehicle and he swerved back behind me. Oh God, he's going to veer me off the road. By this time, I was hysterical. I was driving and screaming, "What do you want from me? What do you want from me?" The turn was coming up, the light was red and the roads were icy. But in my panicked state, I hit the brakes and skidded around the corner, ending up in the oncoming lane. No traffic, luckily, and he must have slowed down for the turn, since when I glanced back, I noticed I had gotten some leeway. I only had 1 more turn to the police station. Up ahead, I could see a minivan. I held my hand on the horn, turned my high beams on in the hopes that maybe, somehow, in some way, they'd help. I kept glancing back at those headlights. 1 dim headlight. That detail really stuck in my mind. I'd gained more leeway. Perhaps he'd figured out where I was heading. He stayed a block behind me, and I finally reached the street the police station was on. I turned onto it, and as I was pulling into the station parking lot, I saw him speed past the street. I went in, shaking and crying, and filed a report. I described to them his car, color, make, but the only thing I clearly remember were those headlights, with one dimmer than the other. I couldn't give more detail about his appearance either, other than his gender and approximate age. I couldn't even remember his race. All I could remember was the look on those eyes. I'll always wonder what he wanted of me. To rob me, rape me, kill me? I'll never know. I now keep bare mace in my car and always drive with my cell phone in the console, with 911 set to speed dial.
Number 5.
I was out biking with my boyfriend at night. We're both 23, and we were really just biking out around my neighborhood. We didn't want to go too far, as some streetlights were out, so it was pretty dark and we didn't want any trouble. Now, I live in Mexico, in a very calm part of a very calm city. We get murders and the likes, but nothing like up north. Anyway, I started racing my boyfriend, and as I was turning to my street, I went past my house, leaving him behind around the corner, and 2 houses down there is a house that is always empty except for a car that you'd swear is never driven. And as I stopped right in front of it to let him catch up to me, I noticed the front door open. This is new to me since I've never even seen the people that live there, having lived right next to them for 23 years. Out comes a man around 60 years old, dragging a bunch of bedsheets. It looked insane. He was dragging it out on his front porch, what looks like a huge bedsheet taco that probably consisted of like 3 different kinds of sheets and comforters. But what seemed extremely off was that it looked heavy. I just noticed I didn't specify it was around midnight when this happened. If it was laundry, why on earth would he decide that it was a good time to get it washed or move it about? I stared at him and he opened his car door and stopped when he noticed me right across the street staring at him. My boyfriend is still turning around the corner when the man notices me, and while looking at me, carries this huge bundle into his car and closes the door, walks around it and opens the driver's door. Still making full eye contact, my boyfriend is now next to me staring at him too, asking me what the deal was. I quickly tell him what I've been staring at, stating I've never seen any living humans in the house before, the sheets, the staring back, everything, and right then, the car turns on and slowly backs out of his driveway. We move slightly, but still stand our ground staring at him. As he pulls out, he stops right in front of us, and I get a closer look at the man. He was very old and crooked. He looked deformed by wrinkles and very hunched over. He stared at us, expressionless, and didn't move for what seemed like minutes. It was probably just 30 seconds to a minute. We just stared back, muttering to each other. What should we do? Should we just go back? Let's just leave. So, we slowly start pedaling in the opposite direction. After we're a couple of feet away, we both look back and see that the car is in the same place, still staring at us with his blank expression. It terrified us. We weren't going back to my place because he knew I was his neighbor, and we started going around the corner, and then we noticed that he started to move, in reverse. He moved his car so he faced our direction and started driving towards us. He clearly changed his mind after staring at us and decided he was going to follow us, which he did, slowly, painfully slowly. We then started going faster and lost him around the corner. We decided to go forward a couple of more blocks before going around to my street again. We had lost him, and we were in front of the creeper's house again. We started to ask ourselves what was going on when, right where we came from, appears the old man's car, no headlights on. It scared the living daylight out of us because he was going so slowly with no lights on, and he basically creeped up on us with his car. He was very close to us too. I panicked and dialed 911, and my boyfriend had got on his bike on the sidewalk and started to walk to the park in front of the man's house and told me to follow him. But it was too late for me. Old man was almost at my bike, so I decided to pedal for it slowly as well as I tried to talk to the operator. I stated what I saw, the suspicious acting, and that the man was currently tailing me slowly with his car, and of course the staring. My god, his staring is still engraved in my brain. He never blinked. They said that the nearest police car had been spoken to and that they would drive in there in 2 minutes, and that's when I felt a bump behind me. The car was literally bumping my bike. I panicked and told the lady that the man was slowly following me and that he was onto me already, and the lady tried to calm me down and assured me that the police were on their way. After I hung up, I started to pedal faster and jumped off and got my bike into the park next to my boyfriend, who was panicking and yelling alongside me the entire time. The car stopped. He stared at us some more, got really up close to his window, and then, for some reason, he just sped off. The police arrived almost a minute later, and we got the license plate. We had a fair amount of time to memorize it since it was an extremely slow chase for like 15 to 20 minutes. We also got the car model, color, everything, and we showed the police where the guy lived. We waited alongside with the police officers, and some of them left on their bikes to look for the guy around the neighborhood. After what seemed like 40 minutes, police officers gave up and told us that they needed to leave, since there was no evidence of anything strange happening, and they said if it happened again to tell them immediately. Right after they left, my boyfriend turned around and spotted the car parked a block away, lights off still, and the guy staring at us. Right when he pointed at him, the car immediately sped off again. We waited around the park for a while, still freaking out, and we didn't want him to catch up to us while walking home. But after a while, we didn't see him anywhere, and we sneaked into my house and hid the bikes inside. After that, I have never seen anyone in or out of that house again. This was about a year ago. The car is gone too. I sometimes lose sleep thinking he's my neighbor and that he might creep around my house or neighborhood. What if he did kill someone? I have no idea what this entire thing was about, and I'll never know. It freaked me out to write this down, but I felt like you guys would enjoy it.
Number 6.
This encounter still gives me the chills, and every time I think of starting a fight on the road, I remember how anyone could be as crazy as this lady. About a year ago, I was driving home from a fairly popular shopping area in the town over from mine. It was early in the afternoon, the sun was out, and the roads were crowded. I was driving on a narrow road, one lane in each direction, when a car came up on my tail at high speed. There weren't any shoulders to pull off towards, and with oncoming traffic in their necks, there weren't really any options other than to just keep on going. I could see the woman behind me in the car growing more irate as we drove, for seemingly no reason other than I was in front of her. Eventually, we reached the stoplight. It felt like eternity waiting for it to turn green. The entire time, I watched her through my rearview mirror as she screamed and gave me the finger over and over again. When the light finally turned, I made a left, as did my new friend. She kept getting closer to my tail, which in turn forced me to drive faster to avoid being bumped. This road was similar to the last in that there weren't no shoulders and it was a single lane on both sides. Eventually, we came up on some more buildings, including a large UPS distribution center. The UPS distribution center has a big parking lot that ran parallel to my side of the road. The woman, who at this point was trying to get her car onto the sidewalk in an attempt to pass me, saw this as an opportunity to finally get in front of me. She drove into the parking lot only to get stopped by a truck that was pulling out. I kept driving, and eventually she pulled back onto the main road and was back behind me. We were driving towards another stoplight, and I dreaded getting stuck here again, because at this point she was losing her mind. I stopped behind a few other cars at the light, and she pulled up behind in the left-hand turning lane next to me and rolled down her passenger window. She reached over towards the passenger side, and I saw her pull something black onto her lap. She then reached back over and pulled up a gas canister. She started screaming at me that she was going to set my car on fire and watch it burn, and then started shaking the canister towards my car. With cars in front of me and behind me at this point, I had nowhere to go, and getting out of the car and starting a foot chase seemed ill-advised, so I called my dad and asked if this qualified as a reason to call the cops. In hindsight, it obviously did, but at this point, I had a lady with something unknown in her lap, pouring gas on my car, screaming that the lighter was coming next, so I wasn't really thinking clearly. The light finally changed and she drove off. As she did, she held up what looks like a gun, the thing she presumably pulled into her lap, though it may not have been, and waved it at me. I pulled off into the UPS parking lot and called the police. At this point she was gone and told the dispatcher that I didn't need a unit, but just wanted to give a heads up. She too felt this merited a police action, so 2 cops showed up and took a look at my car. It smelt faintly of gas, but other than that, there wasn't any damage. I had taken down her license plate, and they ran it in their system. They came back to me and told me that the car wasn't registered to anyone, but the same numbers had been run twice that day and several times that week. Hey guys, it's that Grim Raider here. So, thank you very much for listening through that. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Come on, you've got to subscribe. I mean, you might as well just slap a like, just throw in a comment here and there, you know, just because you can, really. I mean, nothing's stopping you from doing it, right? No, but seriously, thank you very much for listening through. If you want to listen to more stories like this, on the screen, you can click on either video, that's the 2 previous videos, or you can go in the description and there's also a link to the previous video. There's also a playlist link which will lead you to a lot of videos very similar to this with hundreds of awesome stories like these. So yeah, with that I leave you with thank you very much, and you'll hear from me very soon.